The security footage was crystal clear. Senator Patricia Williams' 23-year-old daughter, Maya Williams, walking across the marble lobby of the prestigious Hartwell Financial Building in downtown Chicago. What happened next would spark a federal investigation that would reach the highest levels of government and expose a web of corruption that had been decades in the making. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maya Williams had always known her life was different. Growing up as the daughter of Illinois Senator Patricia Williams meant living under a microscope, but she had learned to navigate the complexities of political life with grace and determination. Fresh out of Northwestern University with a degree in investigative journalism, Maya had deliberately chosen to forge her own path, far from the political arena that had defined her childhood. On the morning of October 15th, Maya arrived at Hartwell Financial Building with a leather portfolio clutched tightly in her hands. For the past 6 months, she had been working as a freelance journalist, investigating a story that had consumed her every waking moment. What started as a routine assignment about municipal bond irregularities had evolved into something much larger and more dangerous. The story began 3 months earlier when Maya received an anonymous tip about unusual financial transactions flowing through Chicago's infrastructure projects. The tipster, who identified himself only as David, claimed to have evidence of a massive kickback scheme involving city contracts, federal funding, and some of the most powerful construction companies in the Midwest. Maya's investigation had led her through a labyrinth of shell companies, offshore accounts, and carefully concealed paper trails. She discovered that Hartwell Financial, one of Chicago's most respected investment firms, was at the center of what appeared to be a sophisticated money laundering operation. Federal infrastructure grants meant for schools, hospitals, and public transportation were being siphoned off through fraudulent contracts and bogus consulting fees. The deeper Maya dug, the more dangerous her investigation became. She noticed cars following her home from the library. Her phone began making strange clicking sounds during calls. Someone had broken into her apartment, though nothing appeared to be missing. These weren't random incidents. Someone was watching her, and they knew exactly what she was investigating. Despite the mounting pressure and subtle threats, Maya pressed forward. Her mother, Senator Williams, had built her career on fighting corruption and advocating for transparency in government. Maya felt the responsibility to continue that legacy, even if it meant putting herself at risk. The breakthrough came when Maya's anonymous source finally agreed to meet in person. David turned out to be David Chen, a former accountant for Hartwell Financial who had stumbled upon the fraudulent transactions while conducting routine audits. Chen had been fired from his position 6 months earlier under suspicious circumstances, officially for performance issues, but he knew the real reason was his unwelcome questions about certain financial irregularities. Chen provided Maya with copies of internal documents, email exchanges, and financial records that painted a clear picture of the conspiracy. The scheme involved at least 12 major construction companies, 5 city officials, 3 federal contractors, and several executives at Hartwell Financial. The total amount of stolen federal funds appeared to exceed $47 million. Maya spent weeks verifying Chen's documents, cross-referencing them with public records, and building an airtight case. She reached out to other potential sources within the construction industry and city government. Some refused to talk. Others confirmed parts of the story but were too frightened to go on record. One former city inspector told Maya that he had been threatened with physical harm after raising questions about substandard materials being used in federally funded projects. The investigation revealed that the conspiracy extended far beyond simple financial fraud. The substandard materials and corner-cutting practices had created genuine safety hazards in schools and patients across the city. Children and patients were potentially at risk because of the conspirators' greed. As Maya prepared to publish her exposé, she knew she needed one final piece of evidence to make the story bulletproof. Chen had mentioned a crucial document, a signed agreement between Hartwell Financial and the primary construction company
that explicitly outlined the kickback structure. The document was supposedly kept in a safe in the offices of Hartwell Financial. Maya's plan was bold but necessary. She would pose as a potential client seeking investment advice and attempt to gain access to the building's upper floors where the executives' offices were located. She had researched the building's layout, security procedures, and daily routines. Chen had provided her with inside information about which executives would be out of town and when the offices would be most accessible. On that October morning, Maya walked through the revolving doors of the Hartwell Financial Building, wearing a professional navy blazer and carrying forged credentials identifying her as a representative of a fictional consulting firm. Her heart pounded as she approached the security desk, but her voice remained steady as she explained her appointment with senior partner Richard Hartwell. The security guard, a middle-aged man named Frank Morrison, examined her credentials and checked his appointment log. Maya held her breath, knowing that her carefully constructed cover story was about to be tested. Frank Morrison's eyes lingered on Maya's credentials for what felt like an eternity. The fake consulting firm letterhead looked authentic enough, but Maya could see doubt creeping into his expression. Her palms grew damp as she maintained her professional smile, knowing that everything depended on the next few seconds. "Ms. Johnson," Morrison said, using the alias Maya had chosen, "I don't see your appointment on today's schedule. Are you sure it was for this morning?" Maya's mind raced. She had anticipated this possibility and prepared accordingly. "Mr. Hartwell's assistant called yesterday to reschedule from Thursday. Perhaps the change wasn't updated in your system." She pulled out her phone with practiced confidence. "I can show you the email confirmation if that would help." Morrison seemed to consider this, then shrugged. "These things happen. Let me call up to his office." He reached for the phone, and Maya's heart sank. One phone call would expose her entire deception. But fate intervened in an unexpected way. At that exact moment, the building's fire alarm system malfunctioned, sending ear-piercing shrieks throughout the lobby. Morrison cursed under his breath and immediately turned his attention to the security panel, frantically trying to silence the alarm and determine if there was an actual emergency. In the chaos that followed, Maya seized her opportunity. While Morrison was distracted by the alarm system and the growing crowd of confused office workers gathering in the lobby, she slipped past the security checkpoint and made her way to the elevator bank. The alarm continued to wail as she pressed the button for the 32nd floor, where Hartwell's executive offices were located. The elevator ride felt interminable. Maya used the time to review her plan one more time. Chin had told her that Hartwell's personal safe was located behind a painting in his private office. The safe contained not only financial records, but also physical contracts that couldn't be digitally altered or deleted. If Maya could photograph these documents, she would have irrefutable proof of the conspiracy. When the elevator doors opened, Maya found herself in an elegant reception area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. The alarm was muffled up here, but she could still hear it echoing through the building. Most importantly, the area appeared to be deserted. Hartwell's assistant had apparently evacuated with everyone else. Maya moved quickly down the carpeted hallway, checking nameplates on office doors. She found Hartwell's corner office and was relieved to discover that the door was unlocked. Inside, the office was a monument to corporate success. Mahogany furniture, leather-bound books, and expensive artwork lined the walls. She located the painting Chen had described, a reproduction of a Monet water lily painting, hanging behind Hartwell's desk. Maya carefully lifted the frame away from the wall, revealing a sophisticated digital safe embedded in the wall. Her heart sank when she realized she would need the combination to access it.
But Chen had thought of this too. During their final meeting, he had mentioned that Hartwell was creatures of habit and often used significant dates as passwords. Maya tried several combinations: the founding date of Hartwell Financial, Hartwell's birthday, his anniversary. Nothing worked. Then she remembered something Chen had mentioned in passing. Hartwell had a daughter who had died in a car accident several years ago. Maya felt uncomfortable using such personal tragedy, but the stakes were too high for sentiment. She tried the date of the accident, and the safe clicked open. Inside, Maya found exactly what Chen had promised: folders filled with contracts, correspondence, and financial records that documented every aspect of the conspiracy. She quickly began photographing the documents with her phone, her hands trembling slightly as she captured page after page of evidence. The most damning document was a handwritten note from Hartwell to Thomas Crawford, the CEO of Crawford Construction. The note explicitly outlined how federal grant money would be diverted through fake consulting contracts and shell companies. It included specific dollar amounts, timeline, and even instructions on how to avoid detection by federal auditors. As Maya photographed the final documents, she heard footsteps in the hallway outside. Panic shot through her as she realized someone was coming back to the office. She quickly closed the safe, repositioned the painting, and looked for an escape route. The footsteps were getting closer. Maya could hear voices now, security personnel doing a floor-by-floor check following the fire alarm. She spotted a door marked private on the far side of the office and quickly slipped inside, finding herself in Hartwell's personal bathroom. Through the thin door, Maya heard two security guards enter the office. "Everything looks normal here," one of them said. "Probably just the usual false alarm. These old buildings have temperamental systems." Maya held her breath as the guards conducted their quick inspection. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, she heard them leave and continued down the hallway. She waited several more minutes before emerging from her hiding place. The return journey to the lobby was nerve-wracking. Maya had to time her movements carefully, avoiding the security guards who were still conducting their building sweep. She took the stairs instead of the elevator, reasoning that it would be less conspicuous and give her more control over her route. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. When Maya finally reached the ground floor, the lobby had returned to normal activity. The fire alarm had been silenced, and people were returning to their offices. Frank Morrison was back at his security desk, looking frustrated and overwhelmed. Maya approached the desk with the same professional demeanor she had maintained earlier. "Excuse me," she said to Morrison. "I was supposed to meet with Mr. Hartwell, but with all the commotion from the alarm, I think it would be better to reschedule. Could you please let his office know that Ms. Johnson will call later today to arrange a new appointment?" Morrison, still dealing with paperwork related to the false alarm, barely looked up. "Sure thing. Sorry about the confusion with the alarm system." Maya walked calmly toward the exit, every step taking her closer to safety. But as she reached the revolving door, she heard a voice behind her that made her blood run cold. "Excuse me, miss. Could I have a word with you?" Maya turned to see a tall man in an expensive suit approaching her. His smile was friendly, but his eyes were cold and calculating. She had never seen him before, but something about his presence immediately put her on high alert. The man approaching Maya had the polished appearance of a corporate executive, but there was something predatory in his movement that set off every alarm bell in her head. His charcoal gray suit was perfectly tailored, his silver hair immaculately styled, and his smile never quite reached his eyes. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" Maya asked, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She kept her body positioned toward the exit, ready to bolt if necessary. "Not yet, but I know you," the man replied, extending his hand. "Marcus Kellerman, head of security for Hartwell Financial. I couldn't help but notice that you seemed a bit lost during our little fire drill earlier." Maya shook his hand briefly, noting how his grip lingered just a moment too long. "Miss Johnson, I had an appointment that got disrupted by the alarm. I was just leaving to reschedule."
Kellerman's smile widened, but Maya could see he wasn't buying her story. Interesting. You see, I've been in corporate security for 23 years, and I've developed something of a sixth sense about people who don't belong. And you, Ms. Johnson, definitely don't belong here. The lobby continued its normal bustle around them, but Maya felt increasingly isolated as Kellerman maneuvered closer, subtly cutting off her direct path to the exit. She noticed two other men in suits positioned near the elevators, trying to look casual, but clearly watching their interaction. "Excuse me," she said, raising her voice slightly in hopes of drawing attention from other people in the lobby. "I have every right to be here as a potential client." "Of course you do," Kellerman agreed, his tone remaining conversational, but his eyes growing harder. "It's just that we've had some concerns lately about industrial espionage, competitors trying to steal proprietary information, journalists fishing for stories that aren't there. You understand how it is in the financial world. Trust is everything." Maya's mind raced through her options. She could make a scene, but that would likely result in her being detained while they verified her identity. She could try to run, but Kellerman's men were strategically positioned to intercept her. Her best bet was to maintain her cover and try to talk her way out. "I completely understand your concerns," she said, opening her purse to retrieve the fake business cards she had prepared. "Here's my card. You can verify my credentials with my firm if you'd like." Kellerman examined the card with exaggerated interest. "Johnson Consulting Solutions. Impressive. And what exactly do you consult, Ms. Johnson?"
"Investment strategies for mid-sized firms looking to expand into government contracting," Maya replied smoothly, drawing on research she had done while investigating the conspiracy. "We help companies navigate federal procurement processes and compliance requirements." "How fascinating," Kellerman mused. "Government contracting is such a specialized field. Tell me, what brought you specifically to Hartwell Financial? We're not typically involved in that sector." Maya realized she had walked into a trap. Her cover story was colliding with reality in a way that exposed her deception. But she had to push forward. "Actually, that's exactly why I'm here. My clients are looking for investment partners who understand the regulatory environment but aren't directly competing in the same space." Kellerman nodded slowly, but Maya could see he was done playing games. "Ms. Johnson, I'm going to ask you to accompany me to my office so we can sort this out properly. I'm sure it's just a simple misunderstanding." "I appreciate the offer, but I really do need to get to another appointment," Maya said, taking a step toward the exit. "Perhaps we could schedule something for later in the week." "I'm afraid I must insist," Kellerman said, and now his voice carried an unmistakable threat. "You see, we have security cameras throughout this building, and they show some very interesting footage of your activities today." Maya's blood went cold. If they had video evidence of her breaking into Hartwell's office and accessing the safe, her investigation would be over before it could begin. Worse, she could face criminal charges for breaking and entering. But then she realized something important. If Kellerman had definitive proof of wrongdoing, he would have already called the police. The fact that he was trying to intimidate her into compliance suggested he was fishing for information, trying to determine exactly what she knew and how much evidence she had gathered. "Mr. Kellerman," Maya said, deciding to take a calculated risk, "I think you're mistaking me for someone else. I've been in your lobby for less than 10 minutes, and most of that time was spent dealing with your fire alarm malfunction. If your security cameras show anything suspicious, perhaps you should be more concerned about your building's safety systems than harassing potential clients." Kellerman's expression darkened. "Ms. Johnson, or whatever your real name is, you're making a serious mistake. Hartwell Financial has significant resources and influence in this city. We protect our interests very aggressively." "Are you threatening me?" Maya asked loudly, hoping to draw attention from nearby people. Several office workers glanced in their direction, and she saw Frank Morrison looking over from his security desk with concern. "Not at all," Kellerman replied smoothly, but his voice dropped to a whisper that only Maya could hear. "You see, some stones are better left unturned. Some stories are too dangerous to tell. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Maya understood perfectly. Kellerman knew exactly who she was and what she was investigating. The question was how much he knew and whether her cover had been blown from the beginning. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed with an incoming text message. She glanced at it quickly and felt her stomach drop. The message was from an unknown number. "Your mother is beautiful. It would be a shame if something happened to her." Kellerman saw her reaction and smiled with genuine warmth for the first time since their conversation began. "Ah, I see you've received our little message. Senator Patricia Williams is such a dedicated public servant. She works so late at her office, walks to her car alone in those dark parking garages. Chicago can be such a dangerous city, especially for high-profile political figures." Maya's hands began to shake with rage. "If you touch my mother, I'll destroy you." "Now who's making threats?" Kellerman asked mockingly. "I'm simply pointing out the risks that come with public life. Your mother has made many enemies during her crusade against government corruption. It would be terrible if one of them decided to take action against her." The threat was crystal clear. Maya's investigation had put not only herself, but her mother in danger. She realized that the conspiracy she had uncovered was far more powerful and ruthless than she had imagined. "What do you want?" Maya asked quietly. "Smart question, but not here. Too many ears. Meet me tomorrow night at Navy Pier, near the Ferris wheel, 10 o'clock. Come alone, and bring everything you think you've discovered about our business operations. If you cooperate, everyone stays safe. If you don't—" He shrugged eloquently.
Kellerman turned and walked away, leaving Maya standing alone in the lobby with her mind reeling from the encounter. Maya's hands were still trembling as she walked out of the Hartwell Financial Building and onto the busy Chicago street. The threat against her mother had shaken her more than she cared to admit, but it had also confirmed something crucial. Her investigation had struck at the heart of something much larger and more dangerous than simple financial fraud. Instead of heading home, Maya drove straight to her mother's Senate office in the Federal Building. She needed to warn Senator Williams about the threat, but she also knew that involving her mother would complicate everything. Patricia Williams had built her political career on fighting corruption, but she had always operated within the system, through official channels and proper procedures. The elevator ride to the 15th floor gave Maya time to consider her options. She could turn over her evidence to the FBI and let federal investigators handle the case, but Kellerman's threat suggested the conspiracy had tentacles reaching into law enforcement. She could go public with her story immediately, but without additional corroboration, it might be dismissed as unsubstantiated accusations from a senator's daughter seeking attention. Senator Williams was in her private office reviewing legislation when Maya arrived. At 58, Patricia Williams remained an imposing figure, tall, elegant, with silver-streaked hair and the kind of presence that commanded attention in any room. She had fought her way up from a working-class neighborhood on Chicago's South Side to become one of the most respected voices in the Senate on issues of government accountability. "Maya, what a pleasant surprise," Senator Williams said, rising from her desk to embrace her daughter. But her smile faded when she saw Maya's expression. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Maya closed the office door and activated the white noise machine her mother kept for sensitive conversations. "Mom, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen to the whole story before you react." For the next 30 minutes, Maya laid out everything. Her investigation into the infrastructure fraud, her infiltration of the Hartwell Financial Building, the evidence she had gathered, and most importantly, Kellerman's threat against Senator Williams' safety. Patricia Williams listened without interruption, her expression growing more serious with each revelation. When Maya finished, the office fell silent except for the hum of the white noise machine.
"Show me the photographs," Senator Williams said finally. Maya pulled out her phone and displayed the images she had taken from Hartwell's safe. Her mother examined each document carefully, her years of experience in government allowing her to quickly grasp the implications of what she was seeing. This is substantial evidence of federal crimes: wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to defraud the government. We're looking at potential prison sentences measured in decades. The question is what we do with it. Kellerman made it clear that they're watching you. They know your routines, your security arrangements. These people have resources and connections we can't even imagine. Senator Williams walked to her office window and stared out at the Chicago skyline. Maya could see her mother's reflection in the glass, and she recognized the expression. It was the same look Patricia Williams got when she was preparing for a difficult political battle. "We can't let them intimidate us," Senator Williams said. "The moment we start making decisions based on their threats is the moment they win." "Mom, this isn't about political courage," Maya protested. "These people are talking about physical violence. They're not going to debate you on the Senate floor. They're going to hurt you. And if we stay silent, how many more schools get built with substandard materials? How many more hospitals have to worry about structural failures? How many more communities lose funding that was meant to help them?" Senator Williams turned back to face her daughter. "Maya, you've uncovered evidence of a conspiracy that has stolen millions of dollars from taxpayers and put lives at risk. We can't walk away from that." Maya felt a familiar mixture of pride and frustration that came from being Patricia Williams' daughter. Her mother's unwavering commitment to justice was inspiring, but it was also sometimes reckless.
"What are you proposing?" Maya asked. "We take this evidence to the FBI, but we do it smart. I have contacts in the Bureau who I trust completely, people who have worked with me on other corruption cases. We bypass the normal channels and go straight to agents who specialize in political corruption and organized crime." "And what about Kellerman's meeting tomorrow night?" Senator Williams considered this. "You're not going alone, that's for certain. But we might be able to use it to our advantage." "How?" "What if you wear a wire? What if we turn Kellerman's attempt at intimidation into evidence of obstruction of justice and witness tampering?" Maya stared at her mother. "You want me to walk into a meeting with dangerous criminals while wearing FBI surveillance equipment?" "I want us to be proactive instead of reactive. Right now, they think they have us cornered. They think the threat against me will keep you quiet and compliant. But what they don't realize is that we're not just a senator and her daughter. We're two women who have spent our entire lives fighting people exactly like them." Before Maya could respond, Senator Williams' secure phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID and frowned. "It's my security detail, Chief. I wasn't expecting a call from him." Senator Williams answered the phone, and Maya watched her mother's face grow pale as she listened to the voice on the other end. "When?" Senator Williams asked. "Are you certain?" A pause. "No, don't do anything yet. I'll be right down." She hung up and turned to Maya with an expression that mixed anger and fear. "Someone called in a bomb threat against this building 30 minutes ago. They specifically mentioned that Senator Patricia Williams was the target." Maya felt her stomach drop. "It's them, isn't it? They're escalating things." The threat turned out to be false, but building security found something interesting when they were doing their sweep. Someone had been asking questions about my schedule, my security arrangements, and my daily routines. The questions were being asked by people claiming to be journalists working on a profile story about my legislative work. They've been planning this for longer than we thought, Maya realized. Kellerman didn't just happen to spot me in their building today. They knew I was investigating them, and they've been preparing countermeasures. Senator Williams moved to her desk and began gathering specific files from her cabinet. "Maya, I need you to understand something. This conspiracy isn't just about stealing money from infrastructure projects. If they're willing to threaten a sitting United States senator, it means they have protection at very high levels of government.
We're not just fighting corporate criminals. We're fighting a network that includes people in positions of significant political power. The weight of what they were facing began to settle on Maya. This wasn't just about exposing financial fraud. It was about taking on a system of corruption that had roots throughout Chicago's political and business establishment. The FBI field office on Roosevelt Road buzzed with activity even at 9 o'clock in the evening. Senator Williams had made a single call, and within 2 hours, Maya found herself sitting in a secure conference room with 3 federal agents who specialized in public corruption cases. Special Agent Rebecca Torres had 20 years of experience investigating political corruption in Chicago. Her partner, Agent Michael Chen, no relation to Maya's source, David Chen, focused on financial crimes and money laundering. The third agent, Sarah Kim, was a digital forensics expert who had been called in specifically to analyze the photographs Maya had taken. "These documents are extremely significant," Agent Torres said, spreading printouts of Maya's photographs across the conference table. "We've been investigating irregularities in federal infrastructure spending for the past 18 months, but we couldn't establish clear connections between the various players involved." Agent Chen pointed to one of the handwritten notes from Hartwell's safe. "This memo alone provides direct evidence of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. If we can authenticate the handwriting and verify the financial transactions referenced here, we have grounds for federal racketeering charges." Maya watched the agents work with a mixture of relief and apprehension. These were clearly competent professionals who understood the significance of what she had uncovered. But she couldn't shake her concerns about how deeply the corruption might extend into law enforcement itself. "Agent Torres," Maya said, "how can we be certain that word of this investigation won't leak back to the people we're investigating? My encounter with Marcus Kellerman today suggests they have sources of information beyond what we might expect." Agent Torres and Chen exchanged a meaningful glance. "Miss Williams, your concerns are well-founded," Torres replied. "We've had indications for months that someone with access to law enforcement information has been feeding intelligence to organized crime figures in Chicago. That's why we're handling this investigation through a completely compartmentalized task force." "What does that mean exactly?" Senator Williams asked.
It means that only the 3 people in this room, plus our supervisor and the U.S. attorney handling the case, know about your daughter's evidence, Chen explained. "We're not filing reports through normal channels. We're not using standard FBI databases, and we're not coordinating with local law enforcement until we're ready to make arrests." Agent Kim looked up from her laptop, where she had been analyzing the digital images. "I've run preliminary authentication tests on these photographs, and they appear to be genuine. The metadata confirms they were taken this afternoon at the location Maya described. More importantly, I can see enough detail in the financial documents to begin tracing the money flows described in these memos." "How long will that take?" Maya asked. "For a complete financial analysis, weeks, possibly months," Kim replied. "But for enough evidence to support arrest warrants and asset seizures, maybe 72 hours if we work around the clock." Senator Williams leaned forward. "Agent Torres, what about the meeting tomorrow night? Maya received specific instructions to meet with Kellerman at Navy Pier." "Under normal circumstances, I would strongly advise against any civilian participating in such a meeting," Torres said. "But these aren't normal circumstances. If Maya fails to show up, they're likely to disappear and possibly escalate their threats against your family." "So you want me to wear a wire and meet with these people?" Maya asked. "We want to discuss the possibility," Torres corrected. "It would be entirely voluntary, and we would have extensive backup in place. But the intelligence we could gather from such a meeting might be invaluable." Chen pulled out a tablet and showed them a satellite image of Navy Pier. "The location they chose is actually favorable for surveillance, multiple sight lines, numerous escape routes for our people, and enough civilian foot traffic to provide cover for our agents." Maya studied the image, her mind racing through the possibilities. "What kind of wire are we talking about? Something they might detect with electronic scanning equipment?" We have sophisticated miniaturized recording devices that are virtually undetectable, Kim explained. But there's always some risk. If they discover you're recording the conversation, the situation could become dangerous very quickly. Senator Williams placed her hand on Maya's arm. "Sweetheart, you don't have to do this. We have enough evidence already to begin a federal investigation. You've done more than enough." "But we don't have enough evidence to stop them," Maya replied. "If we move too slowly, they'll destroy documents, transfer assets offshore, and disappear. People like Kellerman don't just vanish, they relocate their operations somewhere else and continue stealing from taxpayers." Agent Torres nodded approvingly. "Maya's right about the timing. Financial conspiracies like this one can be dismantled very quickly once the participants realize they're under investigation. Every day we wait increases the risk that crucial evidence will be destroyed." "There's another consideration," Chan added. "The bomb threat against Senator Williams today suggests they're prepared to escalate to violence. If we don't neutralize this threat quickly, it's going to get worse." Maya looked around the room at the serious faces of the federal agents and her mother. 6 months ago, she was a recent college graduate looking for interesting stories to launch her journalism career. Now she was being asked to risk her life to expose a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of Chicago's business and political establishment. "If I do this, what exactly are you hoping to accomplish?" Maya asked. "Best case scenario? Kellerman reveals additional participants in the conspiracy, discusses the scope of their operations, and possibly incriminates himself in the threats against you and your mother. That gives us grounds for immediate arrests and search warrants. And worst-case scenario? They discover you're working with law enforcement and the situation becomes unpredictable," Torres admitted. "But we'll have agents positioned throughout the area, and you'll have multiple emergency signals you can use to call for immediate assistance." Maya stood up and walked to the conference room window, looking out at the Chicago skyline lit up against the night sky. Somewhere out there, Marcus Kellerman and his associates were planning their next moves, confident that they had intimidated her into compliance. "I need to know something," Maya said without turning around. "Agent Torres, in your professional opinion, if I don't show up tomorrow night, what do you think they'll do?" Torres was quiet for a long moment. "I think they'll interpret your absence as defiance, and I think they'll follow through on their threats against your mother. People who steal $47 million from federal infrastructure projects aren't going to be deterred by the possibility of additional criminal charges." Maya turned back to face the room. "Then I don't really have a choice, do I?" "There's always a choice," Senator Williams said firmly. "We could request immediate federal protection for both of us and let the investigation proceed without the wire operation. While Kellerman and his people disappear with millions of dollars and leave behind schools and hospitals built with substandard materials," Maya replied. "Mom, you taught me that sometimes doing the right thing requires taking risks that other people wouldn't take."
Agent Chin began pulling equipment from a briefcase. "If you're committed to this, we need to spend the next few hours preparing you for every possible scenario." The next evening, Maya stood at the entrance to Navy Pier watching crowds of tourists and families enjoy the warm October night. The iconic Ferris wheel sparkled with multicolored lights against the dark sky, and the sounds of laughter and carnival music drifted across the water. It seemed surreal that such a picturesque setting would serve as the backdrop for what could be the most dangerous conversation of her life. The miniaturized recording device Agent Kim had attached to Maya's clothing was so small and sophisticated that even knowing it was there, she couldn't feel it. The transmitter was disguised as a button on her jacket, and the microphone was woven into the fabric near her collar. Every word of her conversation with Kellerman would be transmitted to the FBI surveillance team positioned throughout the pier. Maya had spent the previous 6 hours in intensive preparation with the federal agents. They had rehearsed dozens of scenarios, taught her techniques for steering conversations toward incriminating admissions, and drilled her on emergency protocols. Agent Torres had been particularly emphatic about one point. Maya's safety was more important than gathering evidence. If the situation felt dangerous, she was to use her panic signal immediately. At exactly 10 o'clock, Maya spotted Kellerman approaching the Ferris wheel. He was dressed casually in dark jeans and a leather jacket, but his eyes were constantly scanning the crowd around him. Maya noticed he wasn't alone. Two men in similar casual attire were positioned at different points around the pier, trying to blend in with the tourists, but clearly serving as backup. "Ms. Williams," Kellerman said as he approached, using her real name instead of the alias she had given at Hartwell Financial. "I'm pleased you decided to accept my invitation." "I didn't realize I had much choice," Maya replied, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heartbeat. Kellerman smiled coldly. "There's always a choice. Some choices just have more pleasant consequences than others." He gestured toward a bench overlooking Lake Michigan, away from the main crowds. "Shall we sit? I think you'll find our conversation illuminating." As they walked toward the bench, Maya caught sight of Agent Chin positioned near a hot dog stand, pretending to read something on his phone. The knowledge that federal agents were watching gave her confidence, but she also knew that if things went wrong, help might not arrive in time. "You've been a busy young lady," Kellerman said, once they were seated, "investigating things that don't concern you, asking questions that make important people nervous." "I'm a journalist. Asking questions is what I do." "Indeed, and I'm in security, which means protecting my clients from people who ask the wrong questions." Kellerman's tone remained conversational, but there was an underlying menace that made Maya's skin crawl. "The question is whether you're smart enough to understand when you've stumbled into something too big for you to handle." Maya decided to take a calculated risk. "What exactly am I supposed to have stumbled into? All I've been investigating is some irregularities in municipal bond offerings." Kellerman laughed, and the sound was genuinely amused. "Municipal bonds? That's delightful. Ms. Williams, what you've discovered is a carefully orchestrated system that has been generating substantial profits for very powerful people for over a decade. We're not talking about small-time graft or petty corruption. We're talking about an enterprise that spans multiple states and involves some of the most influential figures in Midwest politics and construction." This was exactly the kind of admission Agent Torres had hoped for. Maya pressed forward carefully. "And you think I'm going to interfere with this enterprise?" "I think you already have. Yesterday's little adventure in our office building was impressive, I'll give you that. Breaking into Richard Hartwell's personal safe took considerable skill and planning." Maya felt her blood cold. If Kellerman knew she had accessed the safe, then her entire cover story was blown. But she decided to maintain her facade of innocence. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Please, Miss Williams, we have you on high-definition security footage accessing areas of our building where you had no legitimate reason to be. We know you photographed documents from Hartwell's safe. The only question is what you plan to do with that information." Kellerman reached into his jacket, and Maya tensed, ready to give her panic signal. But he only pulled out a cell phone and showed her a photograph on the screen. It was a crystal-clear image of Maya opening Hartwell's safe. "You see, we're very thorough about security. That safe has its own internal camera system that activates whenever it's opened. We have complete documentation of everything you photographed, which means we know exactly what evidence you think you have."
Maya's mind raced. If they knew what documents she had copied, they could destroy the originals and claim the photographs were fabricated. Her entire investigation could be discredited before it even reached a courtroom.
"What do you want from me?" Maya asked, deciding there was no point in continuing to deny what Kellerman clearly already knew.
Excellent question. We want three things. First, we want all copies of the photographs you took, including any backups you may have created. Second, we want you to stop your investigation and move on to other stories. Third, we want your assurance that you'll convince your mother to stop asking inconvenient questions about federal infrastructure spending. And if I refuse? Kellerman's expression hardened. Then we move to more aggressive persuasion techniques. Your mother's security detail is competent, but not infallible. Car accidents happen. Muggings gone wrong are unfortunately common in Chicago. Health problems can develop suddenly, especially for people under significant stress. Maya felt anger rising in her chest. You're talking about murdering a United States senator. I'm talking about the unfortunate consequences that can befall people who interfere with business operations that generate hundreds of millions of dollars annually, Kellerman corrected. Patricia Williams has made a career out of fighting corruption, but she's never gone up against an organization with our resources and connections. What kind of connections? Maya asked, hoping to draw out more information about the scope of the conspiracy. Kellerman studied her for a moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. Let me put it this way, Miss Williams. The federal grants that fund these infrastructure projects don't just appear by magic. They're allocated by specific people in specific government agencies. Those people have families, mortgages, career ambitions, and personal weaknesses that can be exploited when necessary. Maya realized he was describing a corruption network that extended into federal agencies responsible for distributing infrastructure funding. This wasn't just about stealing money from individual projects, it was about corrupting the entire system from within. So you're saying federal employees are part of this conspiracy? I'm saying that in Washington, as in Chicago, everyone has a price. Some people are motivated by money, others by threats, still others by compromising information we've collected about their personal lives. The beauty of our system is that it's largely self-sustaining once the right incentives are in place. Kellerman glanced at his watch. I'm afraid our time is running short, Miss Williams. I need your answer. Will you cooperate with our request, or do we need to explore alternative methods of persuasion? Maya looked out at the lake, her mind racing through her options. She could agree to Kellerman's demands and hope that the recording she had just made would be enough for the FBI to build a case. Or she could refuse and hope that federal protection would be enough to keep her mother safe while the investigation continued. But before she could answer, Kellerman's phone buzzed with an incoming message. He glanced at it and his expression changed completely. It seems we have a problem, Miss Williams. My associates have just informed me that your mother left her Senate office 15 minutes ago without her security detail. She's currently driving alone toward an unknown destination. Maya's heart began pounding. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that Senator Patricia Williams appears to have decided to take matters into her own hands, which means our conversation just became much more urgent. Maya's blood turned to ice as Kellerman's words sank in. Her mother was supposed to be safely secured in the federal building under FBI protection, not driving alone through Chicago at night while being tracked by dangerous criminals. Where is she? Maya demanded, her carefully maintained composure finally cracking. Kellerman showed her another message on his phone. According to our sources, Senator Williams received an urgent phone call about 20 minutes ago claiming that your daughter was in immediate danger and needed help. The caller provided specific details about your meeting tonight that convinced her the threat was genuine. Maya realized with growing horror that they had been outmaneuvered. While she had been focused on gathering evidence against Kellerman, his organization had been setting an elaborate trap using her mother as bait. You orchestrated this entire meeting to get her alone. Partially correct, Kellerman replied. We certainly hoped she would react predictably to news of your alleged predicament. But the primary purpose of tonight's meeting was to determine exactly how much evidence you had gathered and whether you could be persuaded to cooperate quietly.
Maya's mind raced through her options. The FBI agents positioned around Navy Pier could hear everything through her wire, but they were focused on her immediate safety, not on tracking Senator Williams across the city. Her mother was somewhere out there, alone and vulnerable, driving toward what she believed was a rescue mission for her daughter.
"What do you want?" Maya asked, trying to keep Kellerman talking, while hoping the FBI could somehow trace her mother's location. "Simple. You're going to call your mother and tell her you're safe. You're going to convince her to return to her office immediately. And then we're all going to have a civilized conversation about how this situation gets resolved without anyone getting hurt." Kellerman handed Maya a burner phone. "Use this. Your personal phone might be monitored by law enforcement." Maya stared at the device, knowing that making this call would likely save her mother's immediate safety, but would also give Kellerman crucial information about FBI involvement. If the Bureau was monitoring her regular phone, as Kellerman suspected, then he would know for certain that she was working with federal agents. "How do I know you'll keep your word about my mother's safety?" Maya asked. "You don't," Kellerman replied honestly. "But right now, Senator Williams is driving toward a warehouse district on the south side where my associates are waiting for her. If she doesn't receive a call from you in the next 10 minutes convincing her to turn around, that meeting is going to proceed whether you cooperate or not." Maya realized she had no choice. She took the burner phone and dialed her mother's number, praying that Senator Williams would understand whatever coded warnings she might be able to include in the conversation. The phone rang 3 times before Senator Williams answered. "Maya? Thank God. Are you all right? I got a call saying you were in trouble." "Mom, I'm fine," Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Where are you right now?" "I'm driving to the address they gave me, some warehouse near Halstead and 31st Street. They said you were being held there, and that if I didn't come alone, they would hurt you." Maya closed her eyes, knowing that her mother was walking directly into a trap. "Mom, listen to me carefully. I'm not at that location. I'm safe, and I need you to turn around and go back to your office right now." "What? But they said—" "They lied," Maya interrupted. "It's a setup to get you isolated. Please, just turn around and drive back to the Federal Building." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Maya could hear traffic sounds in the background and realized her mother was still driving toward the warehouse district. "Maya, is someone forcing you to make this call?" Senator Williams asked quietly. Maya glanced at Kellerman, who was watching her intently. She had to assume he could hear at least her side of the conversation, so she needed to be careful about what she said. "I can't explain everything right now, but I need you to trust me and turn around, go back to Agent Torres and tell her what happened." The mention of Agent Torres caused Kellerman's expression to change dramatically. He had been relatively calm throughout their conversation, but now Maya could see genuine concern in his eyes. "Who is Agent Torres?" Kellerman asked sharply. Maya realized she had made a critical error. By mentioning the FBI agent by name, she had confirmed that law enforcement was involved and that they were closer to the conspiracy than Kellerman had realized. Before Maya could respond, Kellerman grabbed the phone from her. "Senator Williams, this is Marcus Kellerman with Hartwell Financial. I believe we need to have a face-to-face conversation about your daughter's recent activities." Maya watched in growing alarm as Kellerman's 2 associates began moving closer to their position. She realized that her mention of Agent Torres had fundamentally changed the dynamic of the situation. Kellerman now knew that federal law enforcement was actively involved, which made both Maya and her mother immediate threats that needed to be neutralized. "Senator Williams," Kellerman continued into the phone, "I'm going to give you a new address. I need you to meet us there in 30 minutes. If you involve any law enforcement agencies in this meeting, the consequences for your daughter will be severe." Maya made a split-second decision. She stood up abruptly and shouted as loudly as she could, "FBI, help!" The response was immediate and overwhelming.
Agent Chen appeared from behind the hot dog stand with his weapon drawn, shouting commands for everyone to get on the ground. Agent Torres emerged from a group of tourists near the Ferris wheel, also armed and moving rapidly toward their position. At least 6 other federal agents materialized from various locations around the pier, all converging on Maya and Kellerman.
Kellerman's associates tried to run, but they were quickly surrounded and detained. One of them, a heavy-set man in a Cubs jacket, attempted to draw a concealed weapon but was tackled by 2 agents before he could clear his holster. The other associate, a younger man with a distinctive scar across his left cheek, tried to blend into the crowd of panicking tourists but was spotted by Agent Kim, who had positioned herself near the pier's exit. Kellerman himself raised his hand slowly, but Maya could see him trying to destroy the burner phone he had been using to communicate with his people. Agent Torres moved swiftly to prevent him from completing the destruction of evidence. "Marcus Kellerman, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and threatening a federal official," Agent Torres announced as she approached with handcuffs. But Maya's relief was short-lived. "Agent Torres, my mother is still driving toward that warehouse. Kellerman's people are waiting for her there." Torres immediately activated her radio. "Control, this is Torres. We need immediate backup at Halstead and 31st Street. Senator Patricia Williams is en route to that location and may be walking into a hostile situation. Consider the suspects armed and extremely dangerous." The response from FBI headquarters was swift and comprehensive. Within minutes, Maya could hear helicopters overhead as federal agents coordinated with Chicago Police Department units to intercept Senator Williams before she reached the warehouse district. As federal agents secured the scene at Navy Pier, Maya found herself in the surreal position of watching her investigation come to its climax in real time. Kellerman was being read his rights while still trying to issue threats about the consequences of interfering with his organization. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," Kellerman said to Agent Torres. "This goes far beyond Chicago. You arrest me, and 10 other people will step in to take my place. The network we built has roots you can't even imagine." "Maybe so," Torres replied, "but those 10 people won't have access to the financial records and communications we seized from your office building about 2 hours ago." Maya looked at her in surprise. "You raided Hartwell Financial?" "We executed search warrants at 17 different locations simultaneously," Torres explained. "Your wire recording tonight gave us the probable cause we needed to move immediately. We've arrested 12 people so far, including Richard Hartwell himself and 3 federal employees who were facilitating the fraud." Agent Chen approached them with an update from his radio. "Senator Williams has been located and is safe. She was intercepted by Chicago PD about 6 blocks from the warehouse. The situation there was more serious than we initially realized." Maya felt her knees go weak with relief, but Chen's expression suggested there was more to the story. "What do you mean?" Maya asked. "The warehouse location wasn't just a meeting place," Chen explained. "Our tactical team found evidence of a significant criminal operation. There were computers, financial records, and what appears to be a sophisticated money laundering setup. We also found 3 suspects who were armed and appeared to be preparing for a confrontation." Agent Torres received another radio update and turned to Maya with a grim expression. "Maya, the information you gathered has given us evidence of federal crimes involving at least $47 million in stolen infrastructure funds. But Kellerman was right about one thing. This conspiracy extends far beyond Chicago." "What do you mean?" Maya asked. "The financial records we seized tonight show similar patterns of fraud in Detroit, Milwaukee, Cleveland, and St. Louis. We're looking at a multi-state corruption network that has been operating for over a decade. The preliminary analysis suggests the total amount of stolen federal funds could exceed $200 million. Agent Chen approached them with an update from his radio. "Senator Williams has been located and is safe. She was intercepted by Chicago PD about 6 blocks from the warehouse. The situation there was more serious than we initially realized." Maya felt her knees go weak with relief, but Chen's expression suggested there was more to the story. "What do you mean?" Maya asked.
The warehouse location wasn't just a meeting place, Chen explained. Our tactical team found evidence of a significant criminal operation. There were computers, financial records, and what appears to be a sophisticated money laundering setup. We also found 3 suspects who were armed and appeared to be preparing for a confrontation. Agent Torres received another radio update and turned to Maya with a grim expression. Maya, the information you gathered has given us evidence of federal crimes involving at least $47 million in stolen infrastructure funds. But Kellerman was right about one thing. This conspiracy extends far beyond Chicago. What do you mean? Maya asked. The financial records we seized tonight show similar patterns of fraud in Detroit, Milwaukee, Cleveland, and St. Louis. We're looking at a multi-state corruption network that has been operating for over a decade. The preliminary analysis suggests the total amount of stolen federal funds could exceed $200 million.
Agent Kim appeared with a tablet showing preliminary analysis of the digital evidence they had collected. We've identified federal employees in 3 different agencies who appear to have been facilitating the fraud. This includes people in the Department of Transportation, Housing and Urban Development, and the Environmental Protection Agency. Maya, your investigation has uncovered what might be the largest infrastructure fraud case in federal history. Maya realized that her investigation had uncovered something far larger than she had ever imagined. What started as a simple story about municipal bond irregularities had revealed a systematic corruption network that stretched across the Midwest and reached into the federal government itself. The magnitude of what they had discovered became clearer as more information flowed in from the coordinated raids. Agent Torres received a call from FBI headquarters that lasted nearly 10 minutes, during which her expression grew increasingly serious. "What's the latest?" Maya asked when Torres finished the call. "The scope keeps expanding," Torres replied. "We've just learned that the corruption network includes defense contractors who have been inflating costs on military construction projects. We're talking about fraud involving schools, hospitals, bridges, military bases, and federal office buildings across at least 8 states."
As they prepared to leave Navy Pier, Kellerman made one final attempt to intimidate Maya. "This isn't over," he said, as federal agents loaded him into a transport vehicle. "You think you've won something, but you have no idea how deep this goes. There are people involved in this who can make your life very difficult, even from prison." Agent Torres stepped between Kellerman and Maya. "Mr. Kellerman, I'd suggest you focus on cooperating with federal prosecutors rather than making additional threats. The evidence we've gathered tonight is more than sufficient to ensure you spend the next 20 years in federal prison." As the transport vehicle drove away, Maya reflected on the surreal nature of the evening. Less than 6 hours ago, she had been a nervous young journalist preparing to wear a wire for the first time. Now she was at the center of what federal agents were calling the largest public corruption investigation in decades. Agent Chen approached with another update. "Maya, we have just received word that your source, David Chen, is safe. We had agents monitoring his location throughout the evening in case Kellerman's people tried to retaliate against him." Maya felt another wave of relief. She had been so focused on her own safety and her mother's situation that she hadn't considered the danger David Chen might be facing as the person who had first exposed the conspiracy. "Where is he now?" Maya asked. "Federal protective custody," Chen replied. "He'll be a crucial witness in the prosecution, so we're taking no chances with his safety." Agent Torres gathered Maya and the other agents for a brief debriefing before they left the pier. "Tonight's operation was a complete success, but it's important to understand that this is just the beginning. The investigation that Maya started will likely continue for years as we work to identify every participant in this network and recover as much stolen money as possible." Maya looked out at Lake Michigan, thinking about all the implications of what they had uncovered. "Agent Torres, what about the buildings? The schools and hospitals that were built with substandard materials? Federal engineers are already being deployed to conduct emergency safety inspections. Any structures that pose immediate risks will be evacuated and repaired. The Department of Education and Health and Human Services are coordinating with state authorities to ensure public safety. How many buildings are we talking about? Based on the financial records we've reviewed so far, potentially hundreds. Schools in Detroit, hospitals in Milwaukee, bridges in Cleveland, government buildings in St. Louis. The safety implications are staggering. As they walked toward the FBI vehicles, Agent Kim provided additional details about the digital evidence they had collected. We've recovered communications going back 7 years that document the entire operation: email exchanges, financial transfers, construction contracts, inspection reports that were falsified, everything we need to build comprehensive cases against every participant. Maya realized that her decision to investigate suspicious municipal bond offerings had led to the exposure of a criminal enterprise that had put thousands of people at risk. Children attending schools built with substandard materials, patients in hospitals with compromised structural integrity, commuters using bridges that might not meet safety standards. Agent Torres, how long before the public knows about all of this? Federal prosecutors will be holding a press conference tomorrow morning. The public has a right to know about the safety risks and the steps being taken to address them. Your story is going to be front-page news across the country. The next morning, Maya sat in a conference room at FBI headquarters, watching news coverage of the arrests. Reporters were calling it the largest public corruption case in Chicago's history, but the story was quickly becoming national news as the multi-state scope of the conspiracy became clear. CNN was running a continuous feed showing federal agents conducting raids in 5 different cities. The Associated Press had published a detailed timeline of the investigation based on information provided by federal prosecutors. The Washington Post had assigned a team of investigative reporters to dig deeper into the political implications of federal employees being involved in the conspiracy. Senator Williams arrived at the FBI office looking tired but determined. She had spent the night working with federal prosecutors to understand the full scope of what Maya had uncovered and coordinating with congressional leadership about potential legislative responses. "How are you holding up?" Senator Williams asked her daughter. "I keep thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't gotten that anonymous tip from David Chen. How long would this have continued if someone hadn't decided to speak up?" That's the thing about corruption. It depends on everyone staying silent. The moment one person decides to tell the truth, the entire system becomes vulnerable. Agent Torres joined them with updates from the ongoing investigation. "We've just received confirmation that federal prosecutors in 6 additional states are opening related investigations based on evidence found in the financial records. Maya, your investigation has triggered the largest multi-state corruption probe in the FBI's history." Maya looked out the window at the Chicago skyline, thinking about all the schools, hospitals, and public buildings that had been constructed with substandard materials because of the conspiracy she had helped expose. The financial crimes were serious, but the public safety implications were even more troubling. "What's the latest on the safety inspections?" Maya asked. "Federal engineers have already identified 12 structures that require immediate attention," Torres replied. 3 schools in Detroit have been temporarily closed pending emergency repairs. A hospital in Milwaukee is relocating certain departments while structural assessments are conducted. The good news is that none of the buildings appear to be in immediate danger of collapse, but many will require significant renovations to meet proper safety standards. The scope of the investigation continued to expand throughout the day. By afternoon, federal prosecutors had announced charges against 38 people across 8 states. The list included construction company executives, federal agency employees, city officials, and financial advisors who had helped launder the stolen money. "Agent Torres," Maya asked during their final briefing, "what happens to someone like Kellerman now?" "Marcus Kellerman is facing federal charges that could result in a sentence of 30 to 40 years in prison," Torres replied. "Wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, and threatening a federal official are all serious felonies. Given his age, he'll likely spend the rest of his life in federal prison." "And Richard Hartwell?" Similar charges, similar potential sentence. The evidence against both of them is overwhelming, so federal prosecutors expect them to consider plea agreements in exchange for cooperation against other participants in the conspiracy. 3 months later, Maya published her first book about the investigation, Breaking Point: How One Investigation Exposed America's Infrastructure Corruption, became a bestseller and established her as one of the country's leading investigative journalists. The book detailed not only her own investigation, but also the broader implications of the corruption network for American infrastructure and public safety. The media attention led to speaking engagements at journalism schools, conferences on government accountability, and congressional hearings about federal oversight of infrastructure spending. Maya found herself testifying before the House Committee on Oversight and Reform about the need for enhanced whistleblower protections and stronger audit procedures for federal grant programs. The trials of Kellerman, Hartwell, and their associates continued for 2 more years. In the end, 43 people were convicted of federal crimes, and over $90 million in stolen funds were recovered. Most importantly, the safety inspections triggered by Maya's investigation led to critical repairs on hundreds of public buildings across 5 states. Senator Patricia Williams used the case as the foundation for new federal legislation requiring enhanced oversight of infrastructure spending and protection for whistleblowers who expose government corruption. The Patricia Williams Infrastructure Integrity Act became law 18 months after the initial arrests, establishing new audit requirements and creating a federal office specifically dedicated to investigating infrastructure fraud. Maya continued investigating stories that others were afraid to tell, always remembering the lessons she had learned during those dangerous October days in Chicago. Sometimes, the most important truths are the ones that powerful people will do anything to keep hidden. Her work earned her a Pulitzer Prize for investigative reporting and established her as a voice for accountability in American journalism. 5 years later, Maya reflected on the impact of her investigation while visiting a newly renovated elementary school in Detroit. The school had been one of the first buildings identified as requiring emergency repairs due to substandard construction materials. Now it met all federal safety standards and served as a symbol of how investigative journalism could create real change in people's lives. Miss Williams, the children here are safer because of the work you did. That means more to us than any number of criminal convictions. Maya smiled, knowing that her decision to follow an anonymous tip about municipal bond irregularities led to something far more important than a successful journalism career. It had led to a safer, more accountable system of government that better served the American people. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.